We are back. Cherry and we just returned from our post-tax season workation where I get my wife back. Cherry gets a well-deserved vacation as tax season is the toughest part of the year for Cherry and I. And we get to tour awesome places for investment, like places like Tennessee, specifically a little town called Chattanooga, Atlanta, the capital of Georgia, of course, and Savannah, Georgia, which was where I was really excited to go. Welcome to the Truth About Real Estate Investing Show for Canadians. I am your producer and host, Erwin Cito, since 2016, 300 plus episodes later, once a week since 2016. That's right. Ranked as high as 81 on iTunes in the business category in all the world, where we invite expert guests onto the show to learn their lessons from both success and failures. As the saying goes from Otto von Bismarck, quote, only a fool learns from their own mistakes. A wise person learns from the mistakes of others, end quote. Unfortunately, many didn't hear my warnings about private lending. Maybe I wasn't blunt enough, but I mentioned many times on the show I don't private lend. And based on those learnings, well, here we are. If you ask any real estate accountant or lawyer where their clients are complaining or losing the most money from, you guessed it, private lending. So back to our trip. Tennessee turned out to be a bit of a flop investment-wise, as prices in the city, specifically Chattanooga, where we were, are comparable to other other top investment locations. So I did not feel compelled to invest there. However, it is home to Volkswagen's major manufacturing plant, where they plan to assemble all of their electric SUVs, and they recently voted to unionize. The sightseeing, however, was breathtaking, both from high up on Lookout Mountain and also from below ground, 260 feet below ground. That's the equivalent of the height of the Eiffel Tower, but we took an elevator to go underground into a cave for a half-mile cave tour that ended in a 145-foot tall waterfall in the cave. And that was pretty awesome. Highly recommend it if you're ever in that area. Oh, and the food that we ate the entire trip was excellent. We didn't make the mistake of ordering too many sushi items containing jalapenos, but uh, the Southern hospitality stereotype, it's all true. We could not believe the number of 4.5 out of 5 Google reviewed restaurants there were to choose from, and the prices were pretty much in line with what it is like back at home. Except there's way more options to choose from. Next, we went to Atlanta for an entrepreneurs organization event, which is a nonprofit that both and I, Cherry and I belong to, and we are board members of. Our hosts own the venue, which the venue was a rooftop restaurant. Our hosts, they actually own, sorry, not own, they own established hospitality establishments on the tops of two separate rooftops. So this is their niche, their specialty. And yeah, it was pretty cool stuff. We had a great time networking with, I think there's somewhere over 50 other seven-figure entrepreneurs in the room. I met with one couple, and they own a beverage company that distributes nationwide to both Kroger and Whole Foods. And then as a side hustle, they have this tiny little investment portfolio of 30 houses. I met another gentleman who bought a failing property management business that had 200 houses under management. He immediately turned it around. This was several years ago. He turned it around, made it profitable right away. He's been profitable ever since. And again, it's been a few years. He's now since grown it to over 900 units under management, mostly single family homes. And he advised me if he was in a position to invest more, it would be in detached single family homes. This is from someone who has 900 units under management. Again, mostly single family homes. He mentioned that the biggest building that they manage had 14 or 16 units. So yeah, again, this was someone I would consider an expert. Again, sounds good to me. I'll stick with single family houses because again, I've done quite well in it for myself and my clients. And funny enough, how I immediately met people, highly successful people in real estate investing in just one night. America truly is the land of opportunity. Well, back here in Ontario, CBC just released a special piece on how bad it is to be a landlord in Ontario. The episode's titled "Unpaid Rents, Arrests, Arson, Fed Up Landlords Fight Back." I've linked to the YouTube in the show notes. You can just look it up on YouTube if you like as well. I watched it myself, and I would highly recommend any novice investor or any investor in Ontario or BC watch this first before you decide to make your next investment. Yes, most tenants are good people. I personally have had two nightmare tenants. Uh, Thankfully, my partners or I are able to weather those types of storms of going months and months and months without rent. However, many people cannot. So if you cannot handle the worst case scenario of a tenant potentially not paying you for a year or more and you never getting paid for that, then real estate investing in Ontario might not be for you. Versus in the States where I'm looking targeting for investing, it is 30 to 60 days to remove a bad tenant, a non-paying tenant, or a tenant who chooses to vandalize your property, or worse, terrorize you, like some of the people mentioned in the CBC special. Anyways, back to the trip. I made the mistake of booking a hotel in downtown Atlanta. For those who know, Atlanta downtown is not the safest place to be, but thankfully the sun came up. Thankfully, nothing happened. Nothing happened to our rental car. So the sun rose, and thankfully that next morning it was a short walk to all the touristy stuff, specifically the Coca-Cola Museum. Coca-Cola's head office is in Atlanta. They are one of 19 Fortune 500 companies headquartered in Atlanta, Georgia. I've got sources linked in the show notes. And it just so happened to be their birthday. May 8th was the day we went to Coca-Cola, was their birthday, which was a surprise of ours. I'm not like a crazy raving fan of Coca-Cola. It's just that we're tourists in town. We're gonna do the touristy thing. My favorite part of the tour was sampling the dozens and dozens of flavors that they make. They give you a little sample cup to go fill up to your heart's content. And again, they had dozens and dozens of flavors from all over the world available to try. My favorite was kiwi lime from Thailand. Next, we left after immediately from Coca-Cola. We made the drive down to Savannah, Georgia, which is about 3.5 hour drive from Atlanta. We were there for 3 days and 3 nights, and it was awesome. Savannah is gorgeous. It was nicer than I've heard. Everyone I've mentioned Savannah to, everyone tells me it's a lovely, lovely, lovely place. It's historically preserved, a small town, small city of 150,000 population, but they draw. This is how popular Savannah, Georgia is. They draw 10 to 15 million tourist visits per year. To give you context for you Canadians, uh, compare that to about 12 million visits per year to Niagara Falls, which is one of the world's natural wonders of the world. Again, Savannah, uh, yeah, it's that popular. Their historical architecture is preserved. Their buildings were preserved because it didn't get destroyed in the Civil War, which makes it a lovely place to visit. The restaurant scene, fantastic. Again, stereotypical Southern hospitality was experienced. And my favorite part, again, because I am a real estate geek, I enjoy investing and making money for both myself and my clients. So I really enjoyed our visit to the Hyundai plant that's being built. Hyundai is the world's third largest automotive manufacturer. You probably know, I'm sure everybody knows someone who owns and drives a Hyundai. Anyways, they're making a $7.6 billion investment. The government's actually chipping in 1.2 of those $1 billion, and they're going to assemble Hyundai cars, specifically electric vehicles, just outside Savannah. The projected number of employees is 8,500, which is bigger than all of Toyota in Cambridge, Ontario. 8,500 is actually more than Toyota employs in Kentucky, where their major plant is. And again, and Toyota is the world's largest automotive manufacturer. We actually rented a Hyundai. When in Rome, or I guess when in Georgia, drive a Hyundai, which we did, which is what the car I rented. So we drove that Hyundai. We drove into the plant parking lot. We were surrounded by hundreds and hundreds of construction workers. Uh, We drove around the neighborhood. We checked out a couple houses in neighborhoods, and I think I found my niche in target neighborhood. Um, I'm actually currently in the middle of creating my US entity right now. I actually do that after I'm done recording this episode, in order so that I may start buying houses, and as I cannot wait to diversify from Canada to the USA, where our economy is struggling here. Our unemployment keeps ticking up. Unfortunately, our quality of life is um, not going the right direction. I hear we're growing somewhere over a million new people in this country a year, which puts strain on both our education system and our healthcare system. So my quality of life and my family's quality of life will only get worse, while unemployment is going up. Versus it's the opposite in the States. Their unemployment is under 4%, and they're investing billions and billions and billions of dollars to create thousands and thousands of high-paying manufacturing jobs that are coming online in the next 6 months to 5 years. Anyways, so yeah, I'm just simply following where the historic levels of investment are going. Uh, yeah, and I should mention that the investment of 7.6 billion by Hyundai and the government is the largest in the state of Georgia history. State of Georgia, capital Atlanta, that state is bigger than in terms of population, is larger than the province of British Columbia. So if Georgia, state of Georgia was part of Canada, it'd be the second or third most populated province. And again, they received an historic level of investment. So yeah, if you want to know where I'm investing, I'll share it here with my clients, of course. And again, I'm just simply following the money. And if you do the same thing, you'll get ahead of where I'm investing. Anyways, onto this week's show. We have my old friend Ming Lim from Volition Properties here. He's a Toronto Realtor and investor extraordinaire. They have, I believe, what they've helped clients acquire over 250 million worth of real estate, and that's almost primarily income properties. I love the name Volition Properties because I think we all know the word volition as in like to about living your life on your own volition, thanks to financial peace, which can, from my experience, can be achieved from having a nice real estate portfolio. The nice thing about investing in Toronto is one can't really beat the number of high quality tenants to choose from. The culture of tenancy in Toronto is just so different. Even before the pandemic, my friends in Toronto were telling me all the time, when you're showing properties to tenants in Toronto, they came prepared. They had job letters, they had bank statements, they had their ID ready to go. They had employment letter. Again, they just came so prepared versus my experience in places like St. Catharines and Hamilton. Literally, sometimes would say you're not allowed to ask for these things. So very different culture. In my experience, the ideal tenant is gainfully employed and optimistic about their future. Therefore, their credit history is valuable to them as they want to get future car loans and mortgages. Hence, they can both afford the rent and they are motivated to be a quality tenant, especially pay you on time. But Toronto is a top two least affordable city in Canada, one of the least affordable cities in the world. So unless you have deep pockets for negative cash flow via condos or single family homes, then you're going to have to adopt an investment model of intensification and densification. That whole term we talk about many times on the show. You see it in the news as well, the missing middle. That's exactly why we have Ming Lim on as today's guest. Ming and I go back somewhere around 10 years. He's an engineer by training, hence he's a bright guy. He doesn't hide truth, hence Ming's always welcome on the show. He shares how some Toronto investors, they've come to him with problems, specifically a portfolio of dozens of pre-construction condos. Ming gives us an update on how that's going. Very sad stuff. On the positive, Ming shares how CMHC's MLI Select program, for those who aren't familiar, it's generally well below market interest rates and up to 50-year amortizations for financing can be used to Ming's going to share how you can use that to optimally invest and develop multifamily properties in and around downtown Toronto. We're going to get into some of the specifics as well, what to look for in zoning, what areas to look for, how often these opportunities pop up. So for all you Toronto investors who ask, Hey, Erwin, when will you be downtown for a meetup? When can you get a coffee? When can you get dinner? Well, Ming has invited me to speak at his meetup on Tuesday, May 28th. Doors open at 6. I present sometime after that. The event ends at 9. I tend to enjoy an adult beverage or two whenever there's the opportunity to hang out with fellow investors. The location is the Kingston House. That's 676 Kingston Road, Toronto. I believe that's Upper Beach. And Kingston House has a 4.6 Google review. So you better believe I'll be eating and drinking there. I've got a link to the map, to the Google Maps, as well as a link to the meetup.com where you can register to attend. I'll be sharing my journey of being a landlord in Ontario for the last 20 years. That's right. I've been a landlord for 20 years. I've had over 300 clients. Uh, my clients, with my team and I, we've transacted on over $440 million worth of income properties. And I'll be sharing how I've started selling my properties here. Hopefully, by the end of June, I'll have sold off half of my portfolio here as I plan to diversify to the landlord-friendly areas of the USA. I should mention, after our trip to Savannah, Cherry has truly bought in to investing in Savannah. I've just returned from Savannah with Cherry, and I'm in the middle of creating my corporate structure in the States in order to prepare to start writing offers in the USA this month, and I cannot wait. I cannot wait to, diversify, make more money, improve my cash flow position, and teach other Canadians to do so. I hope to see you there, and please enjoy the show. Hi, Ming. What's keeping you busy these days?
Man, the market's keeping me busy these days.
I
It's
heard.
been crazy. Like
Yeah.
Toronto has just completely done a 180.
And when did it start? Like December-ish?
So, like to get specific on timelines, it was that late January announcement. Leading up to that late January announcement, it was really quiet. And we'd been saying for a long time, the moment there is a glimmer of stability, that we'll see a turn in the market.
Stability of rates or the
Stability of
market?
rates.
Okay.
Yeah. And if you listen to the January announcement from the Bank of Canada, it was like the softest language they could use, right? It was like, we're not quite committing, but I think that we're not going to raise rates anymore. And that's all it took. And like literally the next week, we went from, a buyer's market where we had, conditions, which we rarely see in Toronto.
In downtown Toronto, you get conditions.
Yeah, we were doing for a couple of months. We were in a spot where we'd be able to do conditions
Right.
and inspections and stuff like that.
Right.
And we flipped to like 10, 15, 20 offers on properties.
And these are houses on land, right? I just want to specify these
Yeah.
weren't condos in the sky.
Yeah, those are two very different markets right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, mostly single family homes, and I'd say more specifically single family homes where they're kind of turnkey, move-in ready. So not attracting developers, investors, that crowd, just end users. That's what's
Right.
really on fire.
People who are moving in.
People who are moving in. Yeah.
Right. So we're recording this late March. So you and I are in contact regularly because I believe, and many people believe, and it's likely accurate, that downtown Toronto is like the epicenter for Ontario and the Golden Horseshoe, where Toronto moves the fastest is the early indicator for everything else.
Yeah, it tends to be like, historically when we see market corrections, right? So like corrections may be the bad word. When we see markets improving, it typically happens first in the downtown core. That tends to be resilient to demand. That's why we invest in that area. And downtown core, I'm not talking like financial district. I'm talking like the neighborhoods around it. So Little Italy's, Little Portugal's, East York, stuff like that, if you're familiar with the city. But yeah, those neighborhoods are the ones that come back quite quickly. And then it kind of spreads to the rest of it. You start seeing it in the North Yorks, things like that. And then it'll spread out to the rest of the GTA. And then a much greater lagging market is the condo market. It will follow the single family market eventually. The hard thing there is like, are we talking like a 3-month lag or are we talking like a 1-year lag, right? Because sometimes it takes quite a bit for it to pick up.
And it seems like, again, like Toronto's the epicenter. The further you away from Toronto, the later it reaches you.
It seems to be,
Yeah.
right? I think that especially if you're talking about the GTA, because I don't know, like how's Hamilton right now? Is it slow?
Well, I have a good example from Cambridge, for example. We
Yeah.
had a client where the tenant gave notice they're moving out, and so they renovated it. It was a student rental. It was rented to students previously,
Mm.
but it's vacant. Fix it up, make it nothing major, just like cosmetic. And then so a vacant house, 5 offers immediately the
Wow.
first weekend.
Wow.
But this
Okay.
thing, it was all end users as well.
Okay.
From all indications, these were people looking to move in,
Yeah.
right? Versus the other side of the market, like take like pre-construction in Toronto, and then what we're seeing as well is like broaden the pre-construction condo part of the market, including like houses. Like for example, we have a listing in like Paris, Ontario that's getting no action at all.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's what I mean by like so it'll take time for those things to move. Anything with large supply in Toronto, likely expand that category. So pre-construction condo, for example, expand that category to anything pre-construction in like say like Niagara Falls or in like what's what's past like talking about like Belleville, for example.
Yeah.
That will all likely be slow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're seeing the exact same thing in pre-construction in Toronto, right? Like, not just like condos, which I think everybody knows. There's a glut of people trying to assign.
Yeah. I don't think everyone knows.
Oh, okay.
Because
Well,
you live and breathe this, so yeah.
Okay.
Tell us what it's like for condos.
it's miserable. Like it's actually quite miserable right now. It's one of the slowest. Like things are still selling, but it's at a glacial pace. A lot of people aren't on the resale side. A lot of folks aren't willing to take the market cut, right? So I don't know, let me take a step back. We saw a booming rental market last year, and we saw double-digit growth in rental prices in the city. Cut to what we're seeing now. We're seeing this corresponding slowdown in the rental market, and it's not like the rental prices are dropping; they're just not increasing anymore. I think it's flat right now. Why? Because you're seeing a lot of condo owners flooding the market with rentals right now. So a lot of people aren't willing to take the haircut on their condos, and they're putting their condos up for rent. And this is, you know me, we love data. This is data that we can't substantiate, and I wish there was access to this kind of stuff. But we are anecdotally seeing a lot of condos double listed, right? So we're seeing them both up as for sale and up for lease. And they rather take $100 loss on their rental versus taking a $50,000 loss on their condo, right? Because the condo market is very slow. The resale side is very slow, and that's driven basically by a ton of supply. There's a lot of supply in the condo market on the resale side. There's a ton of people who have pre-cons, people who are trying to sign out those pre-cons, right? Because we've never been a big fan of buying pre-construction as an investment. Like, I think for many years we're like, our tagline was like, we invest in Toronto, but not in condos, right? Like, we won't do that. Because they're generally not very compelling investments, right?
Even though they compensate much better from a realtor's perspective.
Yeah, I mean, like,
which I don't think many people know.
Yeah, as a business, so there's a reason why you see so many realtors who are so condo focused, especially pre-construction, because they get more money, right? It's easier work. There's nothing to show. It's just a bunch of paperwork they're moving around.
There's a lot more supply.
A lot more supply. You don't have to fight over supply, right? That you often have to do in the city. And you get compensated more, right? But
if you have a deep-pocketed buyer, they might buy 3.
Yeah, I mean, so we are working with a particular seller right now, and unfortunately, they had been, I don't say conned, but maybe not led very well into buying. Like, there's a group of them. They have like 30, 40 condos in their investor group, and they've seen that portfolio, like when we ran the numbers, roughly diminish about 30% from their purchase prices. And, they've had to walk away from like $100,000 deposits, and, they're trying to sell these off right now. And even though we're listing these at like, big discounts from market value, there's not much traction on them. They're also not in the right places. Like, they're kind of on the outskirts of the GTA. So they're like in Vaughan's, they're in like Etobicoke, and those will be even slower to catch up. Like the downtown Toronto, the core Toronto market condos, those will be the first to recover when it happens.
Downtown along the subway.
Downtown along the subway, walking distance, financial district, like that kind of stuff is what you'll see first to turn around. But even in a great market, there's not much demand for $1 million condo in Vaughan, right? Like that's
that's a luxury condo.
It's a luxury condo, right? So that's kind of the thing. And
so it's a fringe tenant you're looking for.
It's a fringe tenant, and it's a fringe buyer, right? And unfortunately, they were not directed well. Like obviously not through us. They came to us after
Yeah.
they had bought all these condos. But that agent who sold them all that stuff is
Yeah.
laughing at the bank. He got
Right.
4 or 5% off that, and sold them a bunch of stuff. That's
Right.
a very poor investment.
Yeah, versus like a friend of mine, he has two daughters go to York University, so they don't have cars. They absolutely needed something on the subway line.
Yeah,
So they're fighting tooth and nail for a 2 bedroom to pay $3,600,
yeah,
and the offers were all big, like 8 months rent up front, 12 months rent up front.
yeah.
Versus you're seeing slowness in Vaughan, Etobicoke.
Yeah, I mean, you'll see pockets, I think, where there's some demand, but in general,
Yeah.
like if I was, take a big paintbrush and paint the condo market in the city, it's a soft condo market, and it's going to take a while before it picks back up.
And you mentioned like the compensation that realtors get for selling pre-construction. Like I get the emails too.
Yeah.
The ones I get are you get paid 2% commission on close. So not when the deal firms.
Yeah.
Yeah. So once the cooling period is over and they have the builder has their money, and another 2% on closing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. There's always this it's page structure,
Yeah.
but yeah, generally the compensation's higher.
Right.
So just for those people who are listening, keep in mind there's always you have to know the other side of the coin too, and that's probably why you see a lot of pre-construction being pushed. Yeah.
Well, the compensation is great, and now people are now caught because there's people not closing.
Yeah, and if you're looking for a personal residence right now to live
it's
in,
great.
condo is great.
Yeah.
But the part of the reason that market is not picking up is because the low end of the market is the most sensitive to interest rates, right? Like, after this, I'm taking a client out to see stuff in Old Oakville, right? $5-6 million homes there, and
Fringe property, yes.
yeah, nice places. But if their house is $400,000 more, $400,000 less from their target, it doesn't make an appreciable difference to their economics, right? But for folks who are buying and selling $600,000-$700,000 condos, every couple $100 in their mortgage payment is a big impact to their budget.
Yeah.
So, when we start seeing rates drop, that's what more than any other market, the condo market needs rate changes to come alive.
Right.
The people who are buying $1.5 million, average Toronto homes, they don't need it as much, right? And because they're also not highly leveraged, right? Generally, they're not just putting 20% down. If it's a homeowner, they're putting more than 20% down.
So there was another thing you mentioned to me when we were golfing like a month ago or whatever. You were saying that duplexes were in massive demand.
Yeah. So we're seeing a big demand for anything with a rentable unit, right?
So it could be triplex, it could be garden suite, it could be anything.
So I would say where it still feels like a home, but there's a way to supplement income. Because, frankly, if you're trying to get into the Toronto market, you want to live and work there. Average home price, I don't know, 1.1, 1.2 that you're looking at. How are you going to pay that mortgage without some sort of basement rental or additional dwelling unit or something to help supplement it, right?
Because even if you get like a $300,000 down payment, either you saved it, which out of a miracle, or a gift, you're still talking about like a $800,000-$900,000 mortgage.
Oh yeah, easy.
Which would be easily over $5,000 a month.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a bad Asian. I can't do the mental math, but the mortgage payments are all very high, and you need, especially with rental rates as high as they are in Toronto, you have even like a 7 out of 10 basement. You're renting it out. It's one bedroom, like $1,800. If it's a nicer 2 bedroom, there's like $2,400, $2,500 for a basement, right? So
sorry, let's take a step back. Can you paint? So say I'm a new investor in Toronto. I'm your client. I have down payment through magical gift from parents, or I managed to scrape together. How much do I need to scrape together for an entry level investment?
So
not a condo.
I would say, if you're looking for an entry level investment, if it is live in, it's going to be slightly different from just pure investment.
Let's go with live in first.
Okay, so
because I think that makes sense for most. I'm a control freak.
Yeah.
So I think most Canadians, especially if you're GTA, you should have a home.
Yeah.
Like that way you control it. No one's gonna reno evict you.
Yeah.
Principal residence exemption for taxes.
Yeah, so if it's live-in, I think the neighborhoods that I'd be most comfortable placing any of my clients, we're starting to look at 1-1 to 1-2. Like that's kind of the entry level
Mm-hmm.
point.
Mm-hmm.
And also, you need to, while there's certainly homes that are cheaper, there's certainly homes that are duplexable or duplexed already, which are cheaper. You're going to lose the tenant profile, right? So if you start getting too far away from public transit, too far away from the core, your tenant profile drops off pretty quick. And especially if you're living with somebody, like you've done it, I've done it, lived with our tenants before.
Yeah.
You really want a great tenant profile,
Yeah.
right? And that's something you don't want to compromise on. So, kind of in the corridors along good public transit, 1-1-1-2, and that's a property that still needs a little bit of work, right? All the homes in Toronto are old. Most of them require a little bit of repair. So that plus, I'd say, 25,000 worth of renovations, that would get you a decent duplexed home, probably already duplexed to some degree. And basement rents, depending on the size of the basement, 17 to 22, 23. So
Yeah, and that take a big chunk out of your mortgage.
takes a big chunk of your mortgage.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's funny, like I think most people come to us because we invest in Toronto, and we do all these like 5-plex conversions and crazy stuff like that, right? But that actually accounts for a very small amount of our business, right? Because most people aren't trying to condominiumize a 5-plex, right? Or trying to do land assembly. The majority of people are still just trying to buy homes. So like 70% of our business is just regular people, but they're looking to do something more than just buy a house, right? So they're looking to find a place where they can convert the basement, and then we have that whole conversation of do we have enough side setback for legal rear entrance and enough basement ceiling height? So that's all investor stuff, right? So it's like we call it internally like retail plus, because it's like regular retail, but something on top of that. Even like the kind of luxury stuff that we're doing, it's that same lens. It's like, okay, well, you want a place with a pool. Well, we look at the facilities of a luxury property, the same lens. Like, okay, so this pool is 15 years old and it's a vinyl liner, so we're probably looking at vinyl liner replacement, and the rest of the pool equipment all needs to be replaced out. So we start just putting that same lens on to all the real estate that we do, and that actually is the majority of stuff that we do.
Right. Which is how investors should think about everything.
Yeah, I mean, I can't get away from that mentality myself, right? Like my car, for example, is getting to like 8 years old now, 7 years old, and I just like their new car prices and even used car prices are so expensive right now, and like obviously I have the funds to do it, but I can't bring myself to spend like $60,000-$70,000 on a car. Like I can spend $60,000 on a CRV these days. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I quantify pretty much almost every decision I make.
Yeah, I think it's in our blood, right, to do that. So
it's probably like you come from an engineer background, is that right?
Yeah.
So that's your
math technically.
Math.
Yeah.
Math engineer.
So I'm actually a bachelor of mathematics, because back then the computer science program was. I'm dating myself. There was no computer science.
I remember that. Was
yeah,
it Waterloo?
It was Waterloo. Yeah. So it's just math, right?
Right. Yeah, I had cousins go through that same degree, but they're engineers. They got the ring and everything.
Oh, so then they probably went through computer engineering.
Yeah.
Because they have both computer science and computer engineering.
Yeah. So back then, computer science was through the math department, which is interesting.
Oh, I think the reasoning was like coding is a sub category of logic, and logic is a math type thing, right?
Yeah.
Like Boolean decisions. And
Yeah, we're dating ourselves. We're old.
I know.
But what I'm trying to get to is that I feel my heart aches for all these people. I was just hanging out with my lawyer, and he had like 30 people reach out to sue that group up in Northern Ontario.
Oh yeah.
And then I just don't. People make decisions all different ways, right? Like if you read the book of Influence by Robert Cialdini, then you know how a lot of people make their decisions. Like they'll do business with who they consider attractive character. I make decisions based on like I calculate risk. I do all these things in my head.
Yeah.
Just because from experience I have enough. These are habits for me now. I can quantify risk and opportunity in my head.
Yep.
versus people like make decisions based on trust,
Yeah.
and they're just taking what people say for face value.
Yeah.
And now they have massive holes in their HELOCs that they invested in promissory notes.
Yeah, and I don't know what it is like about the investment industry as a whole. Even real estate. There's a lot of shady characters, right? So
Yeah, and the crazy thing is that I think almost all of them meant well, but they
Yeah.
could not quantify the risk they were assuming. No different than no different than many real estate investors. Like,
yeah,
right.
that's true. It's a fair point. I think.
Like your clients who have like 30, 40 condos, pre-construction
Yeah.
condos to sell, they didn't. I don't think they fully understood the risk.
That's an excellent point, because I think that risk in real estate and real estate investing is actually way undervalued, right? Because I landed in kind of like the banking world after I went through computer stuff, which was frankly miserable.
Computer stuff.
Yeah. But I was in banking for a while, and like, if you come from that industry,
Yeah.
it's so risk focused.
Oh, yeah,
right? Like
yeah.
every decision you make, you're putting out this massive Excel spreadsheet, and you're
Yeah.
evaluating all risk from like 10 different ways,
Mm-hmm.
and that level of due diligence on evaluating risk is just not applied to most real estate,
Mm-hmm.
right? Maybe at a large institutional level.
Oh yeah,
But
absolutely. There. Yeah.
Certainly not at a mom and pop investor level. Like nobody's doing that.
Unless they have education or work experience in it. But yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like one of the things that we came up with was a bit of a risk framework, which we call TIME, TIME. And actually, we have Russell Westcott to thank for this, because we were chatting about it one day. He's like, "Oh, that makes a nice little acronym. Have you guys thought about using this?" And we're like, "You're genius. You're a marketing genius, Russell."
Yeah. Love Russell Westcott.
But it's basically kind of the four elements, right? T is tenant risk, so like managing around this. And
Yeah.
before we started recording, we're talking about what essentially we're talking about is those four elements. So like T is your risk of your tenant, and that's driven not just by market conditions, but also political environment, policy. And then I is investor risk. That's what you bring to the table through either your lack of knowledge or whatever it happens to be, but there's an inherent risk that you're bringing to the table. M being the market risk. And you can kind of mitigate for a bunch of that if you're in the right markets in the right areas. E is estate risk. So that's the property itself, right? Like if you're trying to do a fourplex conversion in the front and a laneway suite in the back, but your property has risk because, I don't know, your neighbor's on a very close side setback to you and they're going to dispute your giant building that's coming up next door. Like that's the estate risk, right? So kind of those four elements, every time we go through neighborhoods, properties, whatever, we're evaluating on those. And it's pretty basic actually, right? Not even talking about like time value of money and all those other things, but at a minimum, those four areas for every deal that we're doing.
And then I'll find your investor risk. Is that where your capital risk would be involved? Like, so I mean, capital risk would be like, there's all these people teaching like courses and whatnot, all this private lending. Let's use the Ontario investor example, the folks who have like 600 properties. Cherry and I have modeled out, like we've thought big. So I'm extremely risk averse. So it's not like I haven't thought about going big, doing big things. So we actually ran projections on a REIT of duplex conversions.
Yeah.
And even then, with commercial financing, it wasn't going to work. It wasn't going to cash flow.
Yep.
Right. And then I see people selling the same thing with private funds, borrowing funds at 8, 12, or 15% or 17%.
Yeah.
I'm like, there's no cash flow.
How's this working?
At Class A commercial loans.
Yeah.
Here you're doing private money in tertiary and beyond markets.
Yeah.
Like, did no one write this down?
It's funny. So me and my business partner Matt, we've gone through the same exercise.
Yeah.
Because I think both you and I we get people who are like, there's a high level of trust. So they're often like, hey, I've got X number of dollars.
Yeah.
Would you take it and invest it for me?
Yeah.
And we've been approached with that many times, so we've gone down that path as well. And actually, not until more recently, the numbers almost never made sense, right? In Toronto, if people are familiar with the market, there's been a big change in as of right construction. So basically what you can build without your neighbors stopping you from doing it. A big one was zoning changes, which has allowed for fourplex conversions in the front. I'm sure you've had guests talk about this. Plus then separate path of allowing additional dwelling units at the back. The reason it's a big deal is getting to 5 units means now you can go to CMHC financing, right? Because what kills a lot of these REITs, call them, that are based on the model you're talking about, is the cost of lending, right? The only way that it seems to make sense is to have government lending, because their amortization is like 50 years, and their rates are considerably lower. So then you're
Can
actually...
you give us an idea of the rate? What rates
So
are you
it
seeing?
depends.
Like, I've heard it's super cheap.
It's well, I guess super cheap compared to what you're seeing now in the market. It used to not be. So it depends on the project, depends how CMHC is underwriting it. But we're seeing anything between like 4.3 to 5.2%.
That's great.
It was really good.
That's like 150 basis points below variable.
Yes. Yeah. And that is over a 50-year amortization, right? So it takes a project that if you're getting regular commercial financing being like zero cash flow to being like, $3,000, $4,000 a month cash flow. So it does work well, and that's something that could work out. But then, so there, I was just on another podcast, actually with Austin, one of your guys you had on, and we're talking about this. And there's one side of the investor community is like, oh, this is going to change and revolutionize the city. Like, we're going to see nothing but fiveplexes everywhere. The reality is, like, man, it's still a really hard project to do. Right? Like, you're looking at 1 to 1.5 for acquisition. You're looking at $1 million construction costs. And you need the lots that work. Like, you need, at least 25 feet, like 22 to 25 feet width, which in the city is not common. At least, 110, 120 depth. You need to be close to fire hydrants, so you meet all the fire regulations. So, I don't think the city is going to be overrun by fiveplexes anytime soon. And we know this.
And deep-pocketed investors.
Deep-pocketed investors. And even if institutions get into it, the reality is we're not seeing it happen in the city, right? Like, we only have, don't quote me on this, but it's a very low number of actual completed garden suites right now. It's been 2 years, right? It's been doing garden suites. I think the built number is like 5 or 6. It's a very small number.
Oh, so that excludes laneway suites?
Excluding laneway suites. Okay. But like garden suites were supposed to be the thing, right? Like laneways are limited to laneway development, right? And there's only a certain number of laneways. But everybody, well, not everybody, a lot of people have backyards. Certainly a much larger portion of Toronto has backyards.
We're probably like tens of thousands of homes that can qualify for this.
Exactly. The idea was open this up to people who can put a suite in their backyard, improve the housing supply. But the actual application numbers are quite low compared to what we're seeing in laneways.
I know why. I have assumptions why. I'd love to hear your assumptions why.
So there's a number of reasons, but part of it is like, it's a little too restrictive. So when laneway suites came in, they're like, okay, you've got to put this angular plane in, right? Which is basically you have to have a slanted roof in your laneway design if it's of a certain size to allow light to enter the backyard, right? Because they don't want big shadows being casted everywhere. So then they took that and they applied it to garden suites. The problem with a garden suite is that you've got backyards all around you. So now they're applying these angular planes to all sides of the garden suite, which makes the garden suite itself a lot smaller than what's practical, right? So, I think they thought we'd be building garden suites which were equivalent to laneways, but they're not. For the most part, a lot of these garden suites are smaller. And, that doesn't work out for the investors. And it's really the investors that are going to be the ones to create these, right? While you're getting a lot, I'm sure, of people who are, maybe want a garden suite to, I don't know, have a secondary office or put their parents into. Most, like I was just at the home show, and most of the exhibitors at the home show are showing off these like 400 to 600 square foot garden suites, right? Single story. And like that's not maximizing the space. It's not going to lot line. And they're all just one story because you can easily transport these prefab garden suites. That doesn't work for an investor, right? If you have a 400 square foot one bedroom
Yeah.
little
It's
place.
like the size of a bachelor
Yeah, and
apartment.
you're utilizing, 60-70% of what you could be building.
Right.
As an investor, you want to maximize 100% of your buildable area.
Right.
So anyway, like it at 100%, you're not building these, you know, large enough garden suites compared to what you can do with a laneway. Like a laneway, you can easily build a 3-bedroom
Right.
laneway, and if you build a 3-bedroom laneway in a decent area, you're renting that out for, $4,500, $5,000 a month easy,
Which is
right?
incredible.
Which is pretty awesome for about a $500,000 to $600,000 investment, right, to build one of these things. So the numbers work out great, even with current interest rates.
Yeah. Because your HELOC can, like, that rent will cover your HELOC costs.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But if you're into garden, if you're trying to build a garden suite, you may not be able to build a 3-bedroom garden suite. I mean, if you have a big enough lot, sure, but most of the lots aren't netting 3-bedroom garden suites. They're netting like 1-bedroom garden suites. And so then now you're looking at like, maybe a $400,000 build for $2,400, $2,800 bucks.
Big drop in rent.
Yeah, because it's 1 bedroom now. They're small. So anyway, so this may
Toronto's
be
progressive though.
Toronto's progressive,
Yeah.
and absolutely, this is where I give the Toronto politicians a bunch of credit. Is they're now looking at revising the laneway angular plane requirements. So I wouldn't be surprised we see in a year's time that they're going to be less restrictive, and we'll see more uptake in garden suites.
Right. And then wouldn't you predict those prices would go up even more once
Man.
for lots that qualify for the larger garden suites?
So
just like laneway houses, I imagine you saw a bump.
so it's interesting. Like I think, I don't want to don't want to knock my fellow realtors, but
I do it enough on this show.
but like I'm often shocked at the misrepresentation or the non-representation of laneway suites, right? So, there's plenty of services out there, guests you've had on this podcast, who can tell you with high certainty. Obviously, you need a survey for complete certainty, but with very high certainty, the size of laneway you can build. Can it be built? Is it close enough to the emergency services like fire hydrants and whatnot? And it is shockingly underutilized in the city. Like they'll all say, "Oh, laneway, so you got laneway suite potential." Half of them you can't actually build a laneway on because you're too. Yeah, and always you've got this disclaimer at the bottom. We don't represent or warrant anything. But like a good chunk of them, you can't build a laneway suite on because it's just too far away from a fire hydrant, or there's not enough side setback because the fire hydrant's across the street and they would need to come up the side of the house. Like there's a lot of that detail. But an agent might just see a laneway and be like, "Oh, you can build a laneway suite here."
Yeah. Lack of diligence, lack of research.
Lack of diligence. Like we have a client who, not through us, they found us afterwards. They bought this house. They had a laneway on there. Didn't know that that's not a quote unquote true laneway. It's an established right of way across the back of a bunch of neighbors' homes. That's not a city laneway. You can't build a laneway house there. So, he bought this house with the intention of putting an addition dwelling unit in the back. Rear, can't do it now.
Yeah.
So and unfortunately a lot of that happens.
Yeah.
And it's not that tough to actually get proper, due
It's
diligence
not hard.
done.
Because even in our own market, like for as long as I've been a realtor and working in Hamilton, we had the same thing for everything. Like non-legal, like fourplex, for example.
Yeah.
It's very easy to check what the legal use is. But like real estate listings would say, income property, for rents, fourplex, whatever, and just like expose their seller and themselves to so much liability.
Yeah. We actually had a case where somebody misrepresented the legality of their triplex, and we successfully sued the seller for the cost of creating another legal unit.
Oh, that's a monster. How much money was that? How much was that?
At the time, that was about $65,000, but for sure.
What year was this?
This was pre-pandemic.
Yeah,
I was gonna say. I think now it's probably closer to $100,000 to do that construction work. But we this has happened to us a couple of times. We had another place where it misrepresented it as well. We have a bunch of clauses in our Schedule A, which is like the additional language, right? doing additional
Sorry,
cities.
just for the listeners' benefit, Schedule A is appendix to the offer of agreement of purchase and sale, what people usually call the offer,
Yep.
just additional terms that we want to use to protect our client.
Yeah, and so we've got something in there, which is we do a bunch of additional searches on the how the property is being represented. Again, another triplex. We found that there was an open work order against the property for an illegal unit. We got
that's significant. Can't close.
Well, we still decided to close on the property, but we got a $95,000 abatement on that. And again,
nice
abatement, not just like price reduction. This is cash in hand at the end of the deal, right, on closing.
Nice. So, that's better ROI for your client.
Absolutely. I mean, you can look at it two ways. Better ROI, or I guess it's the same thing. You're buying for less money, right? Because you're getting almost $100,000.
But you're able to borrow that money. You're essentially going to be able to borrow that money.
Yeah. So it works.
That's why the ROI would be better.
Yeah, absolutely. So it works out well sometimes, and she's going to go through the process of legalization. But now she doesn't have to go through that under a timeline, right? She can take her time to go through that process.
Because just as a rule of thumb, I'm not saying like over leverage, but there's a healthy amount of leverage, mortgages, and your client probably got a Schedule A bank to finance that renovation.
Yeah.
So there's less money out of pocket.
Absolutely.
Borrowing it cheap.
Yeah. Worked out well. Yeah. And
that's the dream, really.
it is. I mean, like
for renovation money to come from the bank at the cheapest possible rates.
She had a bit of at the time she was quite frightened when we were running through this.
Oh yeah, absolutely. For a novice or anyone new, this is like for like you and I, this is excitement. We're getting a deal.
It's amazing, like just what one or two sentences can do to like that. The two sentences, each sentence worth $50,000 almost, right? So,
these are good sentences.
Good. Yeah.
Do you remember what they were? Sorry, you actually said what they were.
Just basically stipulating that we were going to do additional searches on the places, and that they're warranting that there's no outstanding work orders or open permits, all that kind of stuff with the city.
Right.
And so when we ran through the search, we found stuff.
Got it. Yeah, because when we do it, we do specific language for our city. Mm-hmm. The document that we need is the zoning verification.
Yeah, it's going to be different for every city.
Yeah, different for every city. That's why local realtor knowledge, expertise.
Oh, it's so critical.
Yeah. Otherwise, you get stuck with the seller's agent. It's costing their client $95,000.
Absolutely.
Well, at least be transparent. So you don't run into this, don't get surprised with this problem. Due diligence up front, so you're not surprised with these problems.
Yeah.
Because the poor seller.
Oh, and this is the thing, like when we sell properties, we go through this whole process with our seller before we go to market, right? Like we do the city searches, we do a title search. Mm-hmm. Like they're not very difficult things to do, but you have to present a clean property because it's gonna. You can't hide it, right? And it'll just bite you at the end anyway. So it's better to go through all that due diligence up front before you go to market. We actually just went to market yesterday with a duplex. And we found stuff like there were some permits that the owner thought was closed because he finished the renovation 4 or 5 years ago, right? But the city so they had changed inspectors 3 or 4 times, and the very last inspector I guess he just missed closing it off.
Okay.
It was not like there was anything wrong with the property.
So it's just administration issue.
It was just administration. But imagine we went through that, and then we're gonna close offer night, and oh crap, the lawyer finds out that there's an open water permit, and really all it took about 2 or 3 weeks to do it with the city, but it was like very little work.
Right. So for the listeners' benefit, like what happens then? Like so say their lawyer will probably find it if they're any good.
Yeah, and it depends how the lawyer's instructed, right? Like if it doesn't say on the Schedule A that you're going to look for open work orders, the lawyer is not going to look for open work orders, right?
Because it costs money and time.
Money and time, and that money and time is additional cost for your client, right? Like they charge that back. So we always recommend it's worth the extra money, $200-$300 to pay your lawyer to go do this work, right? If they find something, I mean, now this is getting between lawyers, but usually it's some sort of negotiation at that point, depending on what it is, right? So we've had something very simple where the open work order was literally related to a renovation that happened where the railing at the front porch was not secured enough, and that was
So
like
minor.
2 screws
Yeah.
to get it secured more. But because of that, the permit had never closed. So we just closed it, right? Like we just closed on the deal, accepted the open permit, put the screws in ourselves, and closed,
Right,
like
right.
closed off the permit.
Yeah.
Or it can be as extreme as this deck should not exist,
Yeah.
right?
Never had a permit. Yeah.
Never had a permit,
Yeah.
and it's supposed to be removed. Well, if we're going to close on something like that, we should get something back from the other side, right?
Yeah.
So it comes down to a negotiation at that point on what we're dealing with. But yeah, that's kind of
Yeah.
it can be two extremes.
This is the Truth About Real Estate Investing show, and sometimes it's the wild, wild west.
Oh man, it is.
We're still talking about Toronto. We're talking about the most. I know it's not the nation's capital, but
Yeah.
it's by population, it's the nation's
Ask
capital.
a Torontonian, they feel like the center of the universe, right?
Man, I'll tell you about my U.S. trips and stuff.
Yeah.
So you mentioned highest and best use in Toronto. I still think people need to understand what that is because, I don't know. I'm a geek. I like to know highest and best use.
Mhm.
So, like, I think we went through it kind of quickly.
Mhm.
How do I get into the highest and best use investment in Toronto?
Yeah.
And
so,
I know I'm going to need a lot of money.
Yeah. I would say that I approach it 2 ways. So, highest and best use, absolutely, but I'm sure you found this with your clients as well. Oftentimes, highest and best use actually doesn't fit them, right?
Yes.
And so,
'Cause it's a lot of renos and a lot of time.
a lot of renos, a lot of time, a lot of experience needed, and I think a lot of times people approach us with, "Tell me the highest and best use," and then we tell them, and they don't do it because it is actually not easy to do
Right.
or very capital intensive.
I still think people need to be aware of their options.
Absolutely.
Because the worst is if someone who is qualified to do the highest and best use and they don't.
Yes.
They do the wrong thing.
So there's actually 2 areas of opportunity in kind of highest and best use. So one is going to be, and I think probably for the listeners, is probably going to be the most interesting. And we touched on this a bit. So this is a 5-unit project,
Mm-hmm.
right? And the reason that this is attractive is really your end financing through CMHC. So this is acquisition of a property. You're either going to do a massive reno up front, or
So sorry, what's the property? What's it look like? Just
so
give me a mental picture.
yeah, so you're looking for lot value in this case. Well, I shouldn't say that. There's 2 types. You're either looking to do a complete new build,
You're sort of tearing down the house.
tearing down the house.
Okay, so financing gets tricky.
So financing gets tricky, right? So you're gonna be either doing new construction, but the end result will be 4 units in the front, 1 unit in the back. This can also be done through renovation, right? You can find a house that's big enough, and they exist where you can easily put 4 units in the front, and that they're on a laneway or they've got a large enough lot, or you can do a garden suite at the back. Or you're doing an even bigger lot and you're doing 2 semis, so you're doing 8 units. It's because you're severing it, so 8 units in front, and then 2 semi-detached. I guess they're laneways, so they're all connected. 2 laneway suites at the back, right? So 10 units.
But is that a semi as well? The laneway suite in the back?
Yeah, I mean, like, I guess I can use the term semi. They're all the laneway suites are built to 0 lot line. That's a strong word. Majority of them are
Really?
built to 0 lot line.
Oh.
Yeah. So that's
So
one
it
of the nice
means,
things.
so for layman's term, it's right on the lot line.
Yeah, yeah. So I keep using like insider language, but yeah, right to the lot line.
Yeah.
That's just what's allowed for by the city, right?
So wait, so you can cover the entire back of the lot.
Yeah. So you can entire back of the lot, and if all your neighbors build laneway suites, it
You
looks
can't
like a
walk.
row.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks
So it's
like
like
a row
row
of
houses.
townhouses. Yeah, exactly.
Interesting.
Yeah, which is why that's why the access to fire hydrants is a big deal, right? Because you have to kind of go around all the through the path of the laneway. I'm using my hand on a podcast, like you guys can see.
Yeah.
But you have to be able to have that path from the fire hydrant to the laneway suite unobstructed, because it potentially could be just a giant row of
Right.
properties.
Well, because no one would expect you to just run through someone's property.
Yeah, you can't do that, right?
Almost everyone has fences, first of all.
Yeah, it could be obstructed. So anyway, so that's kind of your highest and best use, because rents are very high on these properties for a fourplex, especially if it's 2-bedroom units. You need to be looking at a minimum of 2-bedroom unit conversions. a minimum of, let's say, 750, 800 per floor plate for a 2 bedroom, because you don't want to be as small as a condo. Generally, your tenant profile who's looking for these condo alternatives are doing it because they're looking for condo alternative space, right? They want to be more in a neighborhood. They want a larger footprint. They're working from home.
They want more square footage.
They want more square footage, right?
So you mentioned you want your target's like 750 square feet?
Minimum, yeah. But
minimum,
like,
wow, it's big.
They're big.
Yeah.
But that's what you need, right? Like if you're trying to do a 2 bedroom in like 600, you can do it, but then you're not going to get those primo rents. And this business model is quite rent sensitive because CMHC and the way they're underwriting is rent sensitive, right? Because they're doing it as a cap rate calculation.
Okay. So CMHC is still looking at this like a business.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
The rents still have to justify the investment.
Absolutely.
And
That's why we need every dollar of rents. That's why we can't do these conversions if you're just gonna half-ass the
This
the
is a
conversion.
science.
Yeah, you have to be getting into.
You're trying to basically maximize your rent per square foot.
Absolutely, yeah. Because CMHC is also doing a rent per square foot calculation. Like they're coming at it from several angles.
They're smart.
Their underwriting is sophisticated and I would say quite fair for Toronto. So no complaints about that process.
Yeah. I just want to mention as well. Like I keep getting good feedback on CMHC for the MLI Select program.
Yeah.
I hear from many people they've been great to work with.
Yeah.
Not so great to work with on the renovation model apartment buildings.
Yeah. The one caveat is that if you're withdrawing on a refi, CMHC is only greenlighting that if that money's going back into more housing, right? So if you're
they don't want you to pay back. They don't want you paying it back your investors, or they wanted
to see you roll it into the next project, right? So just be careful if your business model is relying on exiting with a CMHC refi.
Yeah.
If you're planning to roll that in and continue growth, then it's different. But if you're just cash run off to wherever with that money,
you're planning on eating with that money, or
CMHC's not as
buying a Lamborghini.
Another one. CMHC's not as lenient there. So anyway, like, four in the front and then a laneway or garden suite at the back. That's, I mentioned renting out for $4,000 to $5,000. It's got to be a big enough laneway suite.
Yeah.
You need a 3 bedroom layout there really to maximize your rents. That's going to be your highest and best use right now in the city.
So how many of these properties are on the market right now available to buy?
That would work for this?
Yeah.
So that's another thing, like very few. Like, we were saying earlier, like people are saying, oh, Toronto's going to completely change. And like, man, if it did, it would make my business a hell of a lot easier. But like, we have this whole process when a buyer comes to us. We run them, we have a back office team, and all they're doing is going through all our off-market dealers that we get, all our mailing list stuff that comes to us, and everything on MLS every day. And then they're narrowing it down by all our risk criteria, all our developer criteria, and then they take those results and they send them to each of the agents on our team, right? So that way our agents can kind of focus on the relationship piece. But the output usually from our research is 0 properties are available. Like, it's not uncommon that every day there's nothing, because that's the reality. Like, I need all these things to work out on paper first, and then I'd say sometimes 9 out of 10 times we get to the site and there's a site condition that we can't deal with, right? Like a tree that, and if you know Toronto and trees, like, you can't touch a tree in the city, right? Like, the city goes around and maps out all the locations and types of trees every year. You see them walking around with iPads, and they're doing that to preserve the greenery in the city, and that's all well and good, right?
Interesting. They'll sacrifice parking. They'll sacrifice a lot of things.
Yeah,
but they won't sacrifice the tree.
Absolutely.
Interesting.
A tree is a deal breaker, and I mean,
a tree is the deal breaker.
Yeah, all the time. Like, and yes, you could cut it down and face the fines, but they can be extraordinary, like $20,000.
Oh my God!
Tree, right? So
you can't just pay a tree fee and have it planted somewhere else.
And the thing is, no arborist will touch it either because they can get in trouble, right? So you gotta like.
You should be able to like move, like have the tree dug up and transplanted somewhere else.
So like, there's
I'm
just
joking. I get it. They want to preserve the street view, and yeah.
there's just not that much opportunity for these lots. I mean, I wish
They don't have this stuff in like Boston or New York City. I don't think.
I feel like we'll probably end up seeing
Wrong tangent, but yeah.
Well, we'll probably end up seeing more changes to make this easier and easier.
Yeah.
Right. So we're kind of on the cutting edge.
Because you
now.
have to.
Toronto has actually been excellent this way. So like last year, for example, they changed they increased the sizing of multifamily units. So it used to be on the same restrictions as single families, but now they're saying, oh, you can build them longer and taller, and don't worry about density. Like all these things that used to be issues are becoming non-issues. And it's funny, like a wait at committee of adjustments was like 4 to 6 months before, and then they've just been making change after change. Now you're like 2 months at committee, right? So we're going to committee less and less these days for these projects.
Yeah, Andy Chan was just on the show, and he said his number one pick for ease, business friendly is Toronto for these types of projects.
Yeah.
So can we get into some numbers, like what for this highest and best use 4+1, fourplex plus a Laneway suite? What's the purchase price?
So it depends where you are in the city. We have clients who are securing lots like 800 to 900,000.
Not cheap. Okay.
Yeah, lot value, and I would say that's kind of in a B plus area of the city.
Not bad.
So Corso Italia along St. Clair, if you're familiar with the city.
St. Clair's beautiful.
It's a nice area, right?
Yeah.
But like it's not a Trinity Bellwoods, right? Which is like then double the price. so a lot in Trinity that we'd be looking at, it's closer to like 1.6.
Yeah.
One came on the market very recently. Interesting design. It's like an L shape, but similar idea. You could do duplex at the front, triplex at the front, and then 2 side-by-side laneways at the back.
Big enough lot.
Because it's this weird L, right?
Interesting.
So you can so like something like that.
So sorry, the back of the property
the back's
was wide?
extra wide, yeah.
Oh.
But they're asking $2 million for that. Now they've got all their permits and stuff in place. But if like let's say they had none of that, you're still probably looking at 1.6, 1.7 just for land value.
Well done.
On a property like that.
Yeah, just to get their permits, they got all this extra uplift.
Take all the risk out of it, right?
Genius.
But anyway, so like there's a lot acquisition, 800, 900 to 1.5 ish, let's say. Builds, it depends, right? If you're doing like nice high end, I don't say high end, but like enough to get the right tenants and the right rents, you're probably looking at 700 to 800 for the front, right, to do 4 units, and at the rear, it's not too bad. It depends on what you're dealing with, and I hate quoting these kind of construction costs because some people will be like, what, 800,000, it's going to cost you 1.1 million, and some people are like, what, I can do that for half the price. One thing I've learned is like people in the industry have massive variability, and I know this just looking at our clients' numbers, like they're all over the place when it comes to their construction costs.
Yeah.
And oftentimes
because you don't know what the project scope's going to be.
And people are in the industry as well, right? So sometimes they can take advantage of they're the carpenter, right? So anyway, so let's just model it around 800 to do the front of the house, and the rear is probably like another 500 to do that laneway suite. So you're in there for like, let's say 1.3. So 1.3 plus
1.3 for the renovation.
For the renovation, plus 1 for the acquisition, so 2.3 in total.
That's not that bad.
I mean, it's not too bad. So on the exit, you're looking at, okay, so you can do the mental math here. So the two bedroom units should each go for about 33 to 35 per unit.
Rent per month.
Rent per month.
Plus
the basement will be less, so it'll be sub 3. So let's say 28 for the basement. So what does that get us to then? 3, 9, 10. So 12,500 to 13,000 a month for rents. That we'd be looking at. So I'm glad the calculator's coming out. 'Cause-
We're Asians, but we use
yeah,
calculators.
absolutely.
And sorry, what utilities are included or excluded?
Oh, so that would be all utilities paid for by the tenants. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So a renovation like that, you're generally putting in independent utilities, independent HVAC. So each unit has its own, heating and cooling systems, because you need that for fire separation anyway. So yeah, like that could be why the number I'm quoting sounds high for some people, but yeah, that's what we would be looking at having in a renovation like that.
Sorry, what were the rents again?
So it'd be like high, mid to high. Let's just do mid. So 3,500 per unit, above grade. So the main, second, third, 3,500 times 3, plus 2,800 for the basement. Let's say. So what do you got there?
That's 13,300.
Okay, so
that's just the front.
That's just the
before
front.
the garden suite.
And then the garden suite, if you're building a 3-bedroom, you should expect, we'll model out like, I don't know, 4,500. We've seen them go into the 5,000s, but just be a bit more.
Who are these people?
I don't know.
These are pretty good numbers.
One of our clients just rented a triplex, just the top unit. Yeah. It's a 3-bedroom, 3-bath. But it's not that big. But he rented out for $5,050 for just like unit within a triplex. It's nuts.
3-bed, 3-bath.
A 3-bed, 3-bath. Oh, 2.5. Sorry, one's a powder room. Yeah, 3-bed.
How much square feet? That's the size of a house. That's a big house.
It's not a big place. I don't know the exact size.
1,000 square feet?
It's over 1,000 square feet because it's over 2 floors.
Yeah.
But still, it's like $5,050 for rents there.
But your annual rent is like 214,000.
Oh, plus the garden suite. We have to add in.
I got that.
You
I got the garden
suite.
suite. Yeah.
Yeah.
I got almost 214,000 a year.
Yeah.
For 2.3.
2.3
total capital.
Yeah.
Like between the purchase price and the construction. Yeah. That makes sense.
I think
as long as you have the money.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's that. Like people are doing that in the city for buy and hold, and then we have a couple of investors right now who are looking at condominiumization as an exit, right? So.
And the city allows that?
Yeah. Oh yeah. So
you can turn this 5-plex into 5 condos?
Yeah, and sell it off. So the idea is that
that's great.
It's missing middle, right? Like, and the political winds are in support of missing middle. It's not popular in the city yet because I don't think it's a clearly defined process. And anybody who's gone through it is like, it's groundbreaking stuff. Right. But it's not without precedent. Like there's a whole bunch of like church conversions and stuff like that have been done in the city. But less.
Yeah, we have friends that have done it.
Yeah, less so of these multifamily conversions. But like, what's the difference, right? Like, just because one is a purpose built and one is a church that you're splitting up, the legal process and the survey process is similar. So, we do have clients who just have 2 clients who have embarked on this process now. So we're working
on the 4-plex plus 1.
4-plex plus 1 through a condo exit.
Oh, okay. So first off, how many of these 4-plex plus 1s have happened, or
it's very early days. I think we're just starting to see.
We do try to on the show to be bleeding edge, but
yeah. So I think there's like 2 or 3 that are fully complete using this model because remember the MLI Select program.
It's pretty new.
Yeah, it's pretty new. Like all these things are relatively new. I think there's one on the market currently.
For sale?
For sale, asking like a 5.1 cap or something like that. And so for some investors that makes sense, right? They come in,
do no work,
do 0 work, just rent it out, and you're in at a 5 cap property right in the heart of the city.
Right. And how much are they asking?
I think they're asking 3.2 for the property. Yeah.
So for the right person, this could be a flip or a condo and make even more money. And holy cow!
So we have a lot of like very busy medical professionals. Their passion is not real estate. Their passion is the medicine that they're practicing. They're just looking for wealth preservation. They need it to be as easy and hands off as possible. They don't want to deal with a better return, but with condo ease. And these kind of properties make sense for those folks. Right now, with current interest rates, you're break even at a 5.1 cap in terms of cash flow.
sorry to buy.
Yeah, so if you're purchasing at a 5.1, 5.2 cap with current interest rates, your cash flow is zero,
Right,
basically.
right. Because but I know lots of like rich people who buy condos and they're bleeding
Yeah, this was a
several
much
thousand a
yeah,
month.
it's much better than buying a condo. And then
I think I know
one,
one guy his condo's portfolio is negative 6,000 a month.
ooh, that's
Right, so
brutal.
you're offering break even on turnkey new.
Yeah. So I mean, like that's definitely something, and then you're one rate change away from being cash flow positive, right? So it works out for some people.
Yeah,
It's definitely, I don't think, for everybody, because especially if you want to put in the sweat equity and you've got the capital,
yeah,
then you're better off going through this whole build process. But it's a massive build. You're looking at a minimum a year to do a project like this, and I think that's
right,
very ambitious. 18 months is
right,
probably more like it, right?
right.
So 18 months of hold costs, and you've got to have construction expertise
Hmm.
to do this as well.
And you only guide people through this process. You're not raising money for your own or anything like that.
We might be at some point. We've been approached by two family offices who are interested in just like, we were talking about like REIT stuff before,
Yeah,
to turn this into, I won't call it private equity because it won't be available, but just for their own family office, for them to deploy some capital. We might do that. We'll see. It's got to, without disclosing some of the details, it's got to work out well for everybody for it to make sense.
yeah, because you have to put up a lot. You need to do a lot of work.
Yeah, it's not easy. I'm excited about it, but I'm also terrified by it, right? So,
Yeah, it's everything.
yeah.
It's where we've been on when you're leading edge leading edge real estate.
Absolutely.
I'm terrified every day. I don't do that.
Wake up scared.
Don't let this persona on the show of not like you think I'm like I do a lot of analysis because I'm scared.
Yeah.
I see risk everywhere.
It's funny. I think both you and I are actually quite risk adverse, even though we come off as like, confident in what we do.
Yeah.
I'm a pretty risk adverse person,
Yeah.
actually.
We're dissatisfied with our research and the
Yeah.
outcomes of our research.
Yeah.
Okay, so tell me more about the condominiumization process, because like that topic hasn't come up much in like a decade,
Yes.
right?
So,
So for example, like in Hamilton, there was a moratorium over 10 years ago.
Mhm.
No more condominiumization of apartment buildings.
yeah.
So yeah, can you explain what condominiumization means?
Yeah, I mean, it's basically turning a property that is subdivided, and I won't call them existing because it doesn't need to exist. Previous. Let me rephrase that. So, you can take like an existing building that's already subdivided, and you can try to sell it off as condos. And I can see the city not liking that because basically you're trying to take existing rental stock and turning into condos,
Mm-hmm.
and that is not where the political winds are right
Mhm.
now, because
Because it removes rental
it
stock. from the
removes rental
supply.
stock. So, I don't know, but I imagine City of Toronto would be the same thing. They won't want that to happen.
No
But
surprise. Yeah.
if you are introducing new stock, be it for sale or for rental, then the city is supportive of that. So that's what our clients are doing, is they're taking like a bungalow, right, an old bungalow, tearing it down, building essentially a small condo. Happens to be 4 units, 5 units, whatever. You don't need CMHC in this case because your exit is not reliant on CMHC, but you're building multiple units, and at those multiple units you're selling off individually, right? Just like you would a condo.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, you're essentially a builder, and you're selling
yeah,
wholesale.
exactly.
Yeah.
So it is. I don't think it's a heavily established model within the city, and it's because it's bleeding edge. It is. It's hard to underwrite. You know what I mean? Like because we go through this process with our clients.
So it's
we're
difficult
like,
to finance. Yeah.
It's difficult to finance, and it's difficult to understand what your exit's going to be, because it's not like you can do a comp with your neighbor who's also condominiumized, right? Like that doesn't exist. So we kind of look to neighborhoods where there are actual condos, and try to estimate.
Yeah,
on
what the units will be worth. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
On a per square foot basis. Like we come at it from a bunch of different angles, but that's kind of what we're doing now. So it's not like something like this is without risk. When you're bleeding edge stuff, there is absolutely a gamble that you're taking.
So your clients are condo developers.
Yeah, really tiny condo
Fourplex
developer.
condo, fourplex condo developer.
So, but yeah, it is exciting. I'd love to come back on a year's time and
After we
talk about
done,
how
yeah.
how that's gone. So.
Like, how does the process start? Like, you hire a lawyer. How does this process start? Hire a planner.
Yeah, so so the client that we're actually working on with this is a lawyer himself who used to do condominiumization projects in the U.S. He lived in San Diego, and it's, I guess, more popular there. And he used to help investors condominiumize. So when he came to Toronto, he was like, "Why isn't this not happening more here?" So he's had meetings with like city officials. He's had meetings with local councillors. It's because it's very important to get local government on your side when you're doing stuff like this. Even though he may be well within his right, why paddle upstream, right? So he's got the support of local government, and now we're giving it a shot. And so both clients actually happen to be like 2 streets away from each other in Corso Italia, who are both going through this process. So
fascinating. So you guys are gonna be bleeding edge. And is your client looking to be a lawyer for this going forward? Just bring that San Diego business model to Toronto?
Maybe. I mean, like I think there's gonna be big demand for stuff like this, right? Because I don't think everybody wants to live in a box in the sky. One, there's always be people who want an alternative to it, and
in a bigger unit as well.
A bigger unit, and be walkable to those amenities, right? Because Toronto's a bit weird, right? Like, you'll have condos lining a major street, and then literally 100 meters in, all single family. Like, what city is designed that way? So 100 meters in, you could be in more of a quote unquote neighborhood and own a condo there. So slightly different living experience.
In a fourplex,
in a fourplex, yeah. So.
And this is the missing middle that is talked about so much.
Absolutely. So like that's what I mean. Like the political environment supportive of this. It's what the city needs. Like it is a little ridiculous. We have so much single family. It's a weird city where we've got like massive skyscrapers and then a plot of land with one family on that plot of land, right?
It's interesting. I was just thinking, like, we call it the missing middle in terms of like housing options. But it's also an option for like the missing middle investor, because there's people. It's like you're an eye level. We're down here. There's the folks like your lawyer client who can punch a little heavier, like 2 million investments, okay. Right. And then of course the apartment building, the condo is like. Those are like the richest people in Canada.
Next level.
But there should be options for the folks in between.
Absolutely. And it has to be attractive to the investors, because otherwise these things aren't going to get built.
No, of course not.
Like it's got to.
This isn't communism. We're capitalists. Investors are capitalists. They want a return on their time and money.
It's what we actually talked with CMHC. I'm going to say like 3 years ago now about missing middle and what could CMHC do. And I remember telling them at the time. And like, I don't think me and Matt are the reason this happened, but we were telling them like financing for like small projects is very difficult to do. It didn't make sense. And there was too much red tape because at the time, we still had to use the stepping stone approach within the city to add units incrementally. And a couple of years later, all that's gone. So I'll pat myself on the back saying maybe we influenced CMHC a bit there.
I think this is where government needs to be, though.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it's the right thing for society. And there's a gap in the market. Right. It's no different than traditional CMHC getting people mortgage insurance for people to get a home. Right. There was a gap in the market. Private industry doesn't want to be there, but it's for the betterment of our society. So this is the same thing. This is for the betterment of society. There's a gap in the market.
The players are all marching in the right direction right now. So.
And that was a question I wanted to ask. Like, other than CMHC MLI Select, for example, what is your plan B for financing?
For exit on these?
No, say you're because I keep hearing about. I'm not doing this stuff, not like yourself. Like the people tell me about CMHC and MLI Select. I've never asked anyone actually. What is there an alternative? Is there any of the lender anywhere close to that?
Okay, so like
they'll do the 50-year mortgage and the cheap rates.
Yes. So, one of the things that we always tell our investors is make sure you don't have a single exit. So it's why we don't encourage certain types of flips. So if somebody's coming in and they want to build a McMansion on a lot, we we might encourage them to go a different way, because there's a high, what do they call it, theta risk, right? Because you're totally dependent on the timing of the market when you're exiting for it to be, at least a balanced market, but hopefully a hot market that you can sell that McMansion off to somebody.
Yeah, because it's a fringe buyer that wants it.
Exactly. So we try to direct even flippers to multiple exit strategies. So flip it, but as a duplex, right? Where
there's more buyers for that.
More buyers for that. Yeah. If you need to hold it, because the day you go on the market tanks for whatever reason, at least you can rent out both units. You may be a little bit cash flow negative, but you're not bleeding money with an empty house that's worth millions of dollars, right?
And it's hot for resale.
Yeah. So anyway, even with the like a fiveplex, we want multiple exits. So one of those being buy and hold, but the other one being condominiumization, right? So to have the ability to, once the project's complete, be able to have different exits. Because let's say CMHC stops.
Run out of money, whatever.
Then sell it off, right? Sell it off as individual units. Like Plan C would be getting traditional commercial mortgages. The problem there is, you're going to be cash flow neutral at best.
Which is not a bad worst case scenario.
It's not a bad worst case snenario, but it's like,
I'm sure a lot of people would plead for that.
Yeah.
Give their left arm for that worst case scenario.
for 18 months of work and $2.3 million of assets, stand up at a cash flow neutral.
It's better than going broke, bro.
It's better than going broke. I agree.
So or having the lender take back the property or something, which is literally happening right now.
I know. That's
So now you have nothing.
You got nothing. It's true.
Yeah. Now you have no asset.
Yeah. So there are backup plans, and I think that's what hopefully anybody that's going through this is planning multiple exits. Right. But that's kind of what your options are.
So something, if someone wants to get into this sort of stuff, either getting into the market or doing a highest and best use project, where can folks reach out? Where can they get more information?
So our company is called Volition Properties. We are trying to get 10% as good as Irwin when it comes to social media presence. Like, nothing makes me feel more middle-aged than social media. But we have a semi-active Instagram account now. So that's at Volition Properties. We have our website, www.volitionprop.com. And we run monthly meetups. So if you want to see us in person, meet the other.
I'd love to come to one. I haven't been to one in a while.
It's always great to have you out and get to meet all the other crazy Toronto investors in person. Once a month.
And last time he was at Brickworks, and so sad. Like they're.
So this time we're going to be in East. So right now we've been hosting in East York for a while. They're closing down that restaurant.
Isn't that Brickworks?
No, it's off the Danforth, that place.
Okay.
But unfortunately, their lease is up. They had a 10-year lease, and they're
closing.
Yeah, they're closing.
So sad.
I know. I love that place.
I hate it.
Yeah. So
inflation's killing all these restaurants. The recession's killing all these restaurants.
It's true, because they've got less people coming through at the same time. Their food prices have gone up considerably. And what can you do? Like it's a very tough business to be in right now.
It's hard to hire chefs and waitresses and
high labor costs.
Tell me this backstory on the name Volition.
Yeah. So maybe if I could rebrand, I would. But the word volition is basically under your own will, and the idea was that
of your own volition,
right? Like investing, living life, kind of under your own volition, and and now having had the business for like 8 years. Shockingly, a lot of people don't know the word, so we're often trying to explain ourselves and the name of our company.
I hear you.
So who knows? Maybe in the future we might change our name to something way simpler. So
even with our own acronym, like people say I win, they think, oh, they think it's a play off of my name,
Oh, really?
or that I win, which was
Yeah.
partly by design. It's actually an
Yeah.
acronym for Infinity Wealth Investment Network.
Yes.
Infinity Wealth, is I'm a big Marvel geek, and
Oh, I didn't know it
the
was from
Infinity
Marvel,
Wars,
actually.
yeah, yeah,
I thought you said
Avengers.
meant unlimited money. I'm like, I'm on board with that.
I actually had an Infinity Gauntlet, but Cherry threw it in the garbage.
That's hilarious. Oh my god. I didn't know that's what he meant.
Ming, thanks so much for doing this. Folks, I'll have all the links in the show notes, and I'll have Ming's cell phone number as well for you. Any time of the day you can call him you want.
Yeah, especially 3 a.m. That's my favorite time to get calls. So.
But dude, this is like, damn, those like, I have to reiterate, like, those are good numbers. If you can hack it, you have the funds, 214,000 annual rent.
Yeah.
Utilities are all exclusive, and for about you're in for about 2.4, is it? And you're seeing people asking for what, 3 to sell.
Yeah, we'll see if they sell. That will be interesting. I'm hoping.
Dude, with the amount of investment that comes into this country.
Well, we have buyers we're taking to go see the place. So.
See?
Yeah.
So you have crazy rich clients.
Yes. You have to be in Toronto, right? So.
Yeah, that's actually a good point as well. Like, you kind of, like, your risk is reduced by being in Toronto.
Yeah, I mean, like.
By ease of government and also the demand.
Yeah, and like excellent tenant profiles.
Yeah.
Right. Like somebody's spending $4,000 to $5,000 a month on a rental property.
Yeah.
Like, I have one place. I'm renting it out for about $5,000 that unit. The tenant makes $600,000 a year. Like, holy crap.
Can you teach me?
Yeah. Well, they run this online baby supply business, but anyway, yeah, they're usually well heeled when they're spending that much money on rent. So
Maybe you can convert them into a buyer.
we'll see. Maybe they want to buy the house at some point in time. Not before I put a Laneway suite on it, though.
Just so you can maximize your
That's
own
right.
highest and best use exit after your Laneway suite and you condominiumize it. Now you can sell.
They
You
can
can buy
their
the
unit.
condos. Yeah,
That's right.
you can buy your unit now, or you can buy that unit.
Yeah.
The back unit, it's right there. They charge a commission for walking across the backyard.
Yeah, right.
But man, you guys work hard for your money. Good on you. You give realtors a good name.
Oh, thanks. You
All
too.
right. Thanks so much for doing this, Ming.
Yeah, anytime, man. Pleasure.
Thank you for watching. If you want to learn how to invest in real estate from scratch, my team teaches beginners how to use the #1 investment strategy that I personally use in a virtual free training class every month. Go to investortraining.ca/YouTube to register for our next class. The link's also in the description as well. I publish at least 2 to 3 videos a week here, so subscribe if you want to keep learning from seasoned investors like myself and my guests. And if you're just starting out, feel free to ask questions and comment below, and I do the best to answer each of those comments and questions myself. Again, if you're ready to learn the nitty-gritty about real estate investing from a professional investor, register for our next virtual class. That's at investortraining.ca/YouTube. Thanks again for watching. See you in the next video.